What's our thing? What should be our thing? What do we need? Everyone who's listening to my voice, you live somewhere. But collectively, what is missing right now that we can build over the next 10, 20, 50 years that will sustain us for the next 1,000? All right, so the question on the table, I'm actually going to play a clip, Smith. I want to play this clip, and then I'm going to play it again when we come back, because I was listening to this woman talk about family. It's like this financial apparatus. It's a family. Forgot how she. Well, you'll hear her when she talks about it. Her name is Levon Idlette, Idlette. She's talking about ownership and scalable infrastructure. Play the clip, Smith.
Yeah, so I was at a family office conference, and if y'all don't know what a family office is, it's generally a family that has accumulated some wealth, generally more than 50 to $100 million, and they manage everything themselves. Okay, so we're at this conference, and the guy, he says to me, he's actually an Indian guy, and so he says, Indian people, we got a couple things. We got motels, corner stores, like gas station type deals. Vietnamese people have nail shops. Cambodian people in California have donut shops. And he's just like running down the list. Indian tribes got casinos. And then he looked at me, he said, "What black people got?" And I was like, and then I posed the question to Instagram and Twitter, and I got some reasonable answers back, which was like, "Oh, we got barbecue, we got this, we like businesses that we do historically in the Black community." But the differentiator is we are not in the each one, teach one, fund and mobilize each other in these industries like what they're talking about. And if you've never seen this documentary, you should definitely go and watch it. It's called The Donut King. The guy was a Cambodian refugee. He comes and he gets a job at a donut shop, and the person starts teaching him the business. And then they gave him some money for a down payment to start his own business. And then once he got it up and running, more Cambodian refugees were coming, and he was like helping them learn the business. He would teach them the business, then he put them in business. All right, help them go get a lease, help them get financing, all of the things. They stand it up, they pay him back, and then they do it for somebody else. And so at one point, there were like 400 donut shops owned by Cambodian refugees. And so I look at that and I say, wow, we do got barbecue restaurants, but when have they ever shared a business practice? When have they ever even shared like the special seasoning that all got seasoned salt in it? Or said, okay, you open another location, I'll help you with the down payment, I'll help you get your lease terms, I'm going to help you, because if you've never been in an industry, you don't even know what to ask.
Facts.
So now you got people who are in lease terms that are terrible that you could have helped because you've been through it and you've been burned before.
Yeah. Family office. Yes. As I was listening to this clip, there's commentary in our community about, how we don't work together. And then I will always reject it on these airwaves because I see it. I see that we do work together. I think there's a narrative issue. I also think we don't spend enough time around people who support people to know what support looks like. So if it's our family and we're in a family of unsupportive people, then we will think that everybody is unsupportive. Or if we live in a neighborhood that has, been neglected and rejected, you're going to see a lot of despair and negativity and some desperate behavior. And desperate behavior shows up in people taking advantage of people and people acting like Neanderthals that come out of caves. That's a mentality of lack. So if you live in a lack environment, you're going to have lack behavior. If you live among abundance, you're going to have abundant behavior. But we've also been conditioned to not move like that, right? So when people come into spaces as a quote unquote immigrant group, they tend to move into neighborhoods where people speak their language and do their culture practices and all of these things. And then that foments culture. And then you're going to have these stores that also celebrate and, working together. But you've come into a space away from a space where you couldn't have the freedom to do this. Whereas many of us, Black Americans in particular, we're here 400 years again, not centering the trauma, but in trauma. Roger Mitchell talks about this being the new Reconstruction. And the amazing things done during Reconstruction, the amount of people that were in Congress, in state houses in the United States of America, stunning when people could have the right to do things. They ran and won. And then here comes the violence. And now the violence takes the form of legislation. It takes the form of social media commentary. It takes the form of Black bodies uttering negative Black things. And that's why I'm very zero tolerance. Some of you may, not like how hard I go when somebody has anything negative to say about Black people, because the narrative is what has to stop, because how we speak about each other also shapes how we treat each other. And so we have to practice what we preach. We have to practice it, right? And that's not to say we can't be criticized, but let's be mindful with how we do it, right? In love, in love. And what's the goal in the criticism? Are we just talking, or are we building?
Welcome back to Breakdown Friday. Joseph Ward, Patrick Irvin, Professor Carl Tone Jones. We're here breaking down a clip from the Karen Hunter show where they were having a discussion and playing a clip about a discussion about Black people not having a plan when it comes to, or not having businesses that we scale for ourselves as a group. Gave examples of other ethnic groups who get into certain industry realms and they learn the business top to bottom, top to bottom, and they scale the business and they pass the knowledge along to others within that group, give them resources to start a business, and they're able to start a business. So it's something teachable, learnable, duplicatable, and it passes on and on. And these ethnic groups are able to create wealth for themselves individually and collectively, juxtaposed to Black Americans who have been in America for over 400 years. And we don't have such a thing like that as far as how we scale businesses for ourselves or pass on business knowledge for ourselves and even business resources for ourselves on a large scale. She talked about collective business practices. I do disagree with her when she's saying that. Well, I agree and disagree. We have collective business practices on small scales and small enclaves. We don't have collective business practices on a large enough scale. That's why we're having this conversation, because if we had business practices on a large enough scale, we wouldn't have to have this conversation, because we could see the businesses that Black people are scaling within our community and passing along within our community. We could see these continued businesses that are duplicated within our community. We don't see that. So on a large scale and outside of those communities or those realms where Black people are doing well, you're not going to see that. And I think that's the issue, that's the conversation, that's the direction that we should go with this, is looking at, okay, well, Black people, we don't have a plan. So let's go ahead and start there. We don't have a plan. We don't have a thing. We don't have an industry where we have that mindset of we can scale this and pass this along. There are industries where individual Blacks or even a number of Blacks have been able to be very successful in and have did well for themselves as individuals. And even they may have been a small collective, but on a large scale, there has been nothing that Black America has been in, no realm that even if we dominate the realm like athletics and entertainment, especially athletics, even if we dominate some of these realms, you still don't see Black people starting businesses or owning things and being able to pass along the information so other Blacks can come along and be owners within that realm. And that's what we're going to use our imagination to do today. First, we're going to have the conversation of, what's our plan, why we don't have a plan, why Black America operates the way it is. But let's use our imagination on the back end of, okay, what would our plan be? Like, what industries could we scale? Because I think that'd be a fun exercise for us. Like, what industries could we scale? What businesses could we scale for ourselves to actually build something for the future? So, that's the way we're going to go with it. So put your seatbelts on, get your popcorn, put your helmets on, whatever you need to do, put your socks on, take your socks off, stretch on out. Let's do this. You know what this finger means, so I'm doing it early this time. Last time I ain't put no lotion on my hand, but I got lotion on my hand this time, so it's all good. Hit that like button, comment, subscribe, share. Remember, if you don't hit that like button and you don't like black people, you like Joe Biden, you don't really like all the stuff we need to do for ourselves. So hit that like button, comment, subscribe, and share. And I appreciate everybody who is supporting the channel. And we're going to get back to some shout outs and stuff a little later in the video, but let's go ahead and get into it. I want to start with Pat. Let's go ahead and get Technical Ted cranked up and started, man. Why not, man? Let's go ahead and get this thing, bro. Man, you heard the video, you heard the clip, you heard the conversation that they were talking about. Before we get into our fun exercise of scaling, of picking the industries and see how we were scaling within these industries, what's your idea of what's missing that we can build upon over the next 100 200 years? What's missing? What's missing, and why is it missing for Black America to already have something that we have scaled for ourselves?
We don't have a strong sense of a collective identity. I think one of the things that we keep missing as we analyze all these other cultures that we really don't know anything about is and then not to say everybody analyzing doesn't know anything about, but I am saying that most of the time when you hear conversations like this, the people that are talking don't really know a whole lot about the cultures they're talking about. And in this case, I think she's referencing a documentary or something about Cambodian donut shops.
Donut King.
Yeah. And so even in there, like in the Model Minority, I believe it was written by Amy Wu, it details the inner struggles that a lot of people, the Japanese Americans and Asian Americans in general, had trying to create and present the identity that they have cultivated over the decades of the Model Minority. And, you know, it's funny when we talk about what's going on in Asian culture with Asian Americans and their presentation to the outside world, very seldom do we reference the internal struggle that they had in the 40s, 50s, 60s, 30s, 20s, going all the way back where there was this battle between the youth and the elders to forge an identity. And so I think that's one thing to come into a space from a space where you had an identity, and now you're coming into a new space and you're having to reforge your identity in this new space. That is a totally separate process than the process that Black people are having to do in America, where we inhabit a space. We were taken from a space where we had identities. We were mixed up together. We were put into a new space. And now we're trying to forge an identity and a thing that is going to sustain us at the same time. And that is very difficult to do. Most people can't forge their own individual identities and create a life they want to live. And we're asking millions of people to do it at the same time with each other. That seems not fair. So I think that's something that we have to consider. It's the difference between making a space where you don't already exist and making an identity when you inhabit a space that took the identity you had from you. And then there is this argument we have here of the refusal to criticize. Like she said, like, because you hear people say this all the time, right? I don't want to criticize us. I'm very protective of our identity. If we're going to do it, we got to do it this way. And then they want you to do it their way. Like they want you to criticize in the way that they feel comfortable with. And maybe that's not the way. Like criticism is criticism. I don't care how you tell me my breath stink. My breath stink. I don't care. Like, but again, that's the maturation piece that we talk about all the time in terms of being intelligent enough, mature enough, not intelligent, because I don't think intelligence is a factor right now with this conversation. But being mature enough to understand that there's a meaning behind what's being said. Let me find the meaning instead of getting caught up in the tone and the feelings and all that other stuff. No, like you can still be mad about the tone, but what's actually being said. And then we had this other situation where we're still competing with our age-old battle, the age-old debate of Black excellence versus Black progress. Like that's still presenting itself. So I think whenever we look at these situations, you look at the Cambodians and the donut shops, you look at the Koreans and the nail salons, you look at all of it. And then even in that, you're not seeing individuals in these groups that are becoming immensely wealthy. You're seeing the group as a whole become wealthy, but you're not seeing these just ginormously, filthily, fantastically wealthy people owning nail shops and donut shops and this, that, and you're seeing groups of, so that's a whole other component to it where but that goes back to the identity piece. There isn't this rush towards rugged individualism that's existing there. There is this understanding of the cultural communal wealth that has to be built and aggregated for every individual, which is something else that Black people struggle with because we have this constant battle within our heads, this triple consciousness, quadruple consciousness, if you will, where we're battling with Black excellence versus Black wealth. I'm sorry, Black excellence versus Black progress. And so I land my plane right there because I feel like I've been talking for a minute. Go ahead.
Hey man, well, we just getting this thing cranked up. You know how we do it. I want to give a quick shout out to Byron Davis for becoming a member of this On the Shoulders of Giants channel. You a real one, Byron. Thank you for joining that cousins tier. You a cousin, you part of the fam, you a real one. I appreciate you. PC, man. What's our plan? Like, what are we doing? How do we, well, we know how we got here. We know how we got here and entertain the conversation, right? So what's our thing? Like, and how do we change our mentality, fix the mentality to even move to a point to where we can actually productively, realistically have a thing? Because it's one thing to just say, well, what is our thing or what would be our thing? But how do we even create a mindset to be able to begin to create a thing?
I think we have to, and by the way, Pat pretty much, broke it down to the very last compound, so, but I think this whole thing, like we crave the respect of the world as a group, but we seek like our rugged individualism sort of like supersedes that. Our desires to be unfettered and entangled with the rest of the group. As many will rush to the mic and say we are not a monolith. And so these groups all were monoliths, and like Pat said, breaking down the concept of culture and where they come from, they have a sense of nationalism. That in itself is one of the binding ties. In their nationalism, they have folkways that allow them to work and merge together to develop an internal trust. We don't have that. And also, and I'm not saying that there's not reasons for that. I mean, as you know, we were involuntarily brought here. We were involuntarily put to work. We were pushing harsh conditions. And then when we tried to build wealth at every opportunity to build our own independent wealth, we were met with struggle and strife. Policies and laws. These are things that these other groups didn't have to overcome. So let's be clear and honest about that. Because I think a lot of us like to look past all those things and say, well, we're here now. But, the basis of your resume, your history is a great indicator of your future. And because we have been designed and programmed to not trust each other, to lack collective group self-esteem, we have been programmed to, through the manumission acts and laws and policies that reward some of us for enriching the dominant society while putting the glass ceiling up for us. We have a lot of obstacles that need to be broken down before we can start talking about the collective gains. We can't even figure out how to create a political structure that will benefit us profusely, where we are not commandeered by another group's talking points, and then we then try to get in and fit in and use it as a buy-in for ourselves, and then punish each other when we don't get our way. In terms of, more merging into or becoming part of the greater society still, we're always trying to opt in to something that has consistently kept us out. So and I took some notes because it's impossible when we have an internal class struggle. So when Karen Hunter is talking about she know Black people that share, yeah, the bourgeois class shares all the time.
But that's what I'm saying.
Supports each other all the time. But the bourgeois class has created boundaries and borders between them and the Black middle class and lower middle class. So
Right.
if your wealth class is not the one reaching down and creating opportunities to pull the rest of the community up, what chances do you have? We already know that the opposition loves where we are, would rather us build up their community and society through the prison industrial complex, drug wars, and all this other stuff, illegal elicitations, sales of firearms and weapons on the street. All those things, black market things, are used to consistently keep us in a constant struggle to the point where we have not even sat down and say, God damn it, what is our culture?
Right. But it's like you're saying, even in the bourgeoisie sectors, and even where we see black people with a lot of money, those who separate themselves, they still don't duplicate the business models, and they still don't have the like these industries on lock like these other groups of people. It's still vastly, heavily individualized.
But
So
our bourgeoisie is bought and paid for. That's
right.
the problem. They have
Right.
never sought independence. If you go and you look at some of the bourgeoisie, some of them are millionaires, some of them are 100 millionaires, some of them have even crept into the billionaire status. What have they done? They're trying to get their next billion instead of using what they have to incorporate within the rest of the community.
Right.
Like I said, you can't go to other communities and find individuals who live like rock stars. What you do find, though, is a collective community with values that they share, and then so forth. Their communities will thrive. They have nicer neighborhoods, they have schools that appeal to them, their culture and their upbringing, their history, and teachings that works best for their children to be, but they also pay it forward. They actually have a plan.
But that's the thing. They have a plan, but they also have a mindset that can put them in the space to even create a plan that they can execute. And we don't have that mindset to even execute, to create these types of plans for ourselves and even move forward to execute these plans, like the classic tribalism, the classic individualism, the classic, like she harped on it, and I understand it still plays a part, but at some point we got to be able to fight and rise above the trauma as well. We can't keep leaning on that. It's there, but how much longer are we going to lean on that? Because you got to fight it. Because either way, if you don't fight it, you don't build.
Well, it's one thing to look at the trauma from a position of being the victim, which
Right.
far too many of us do.
Right.
But there's another part too that speaks to unhealed trauma. If you get somebody hit you in the knee with a sledgehammer, you're going to feel that pain. It's going to affect the way you walk for the rest of your life. To say that I'm not going to walk anymore because it's painful is one
That's
thing.
bullshit. Right.
But to acknowledge that, Mom, I'm going to have a slight limp, but I need to strengthen up the other parts of my legs so that it can compensate for what's lacking in the lack of integrity of my knee. That's something we're still at the point where we're saying, ouch, my knee hurts. So it's acknowledging things have happened to us, because we can't bypass that,
Right.
But also it's stating that, okay, now they're not going to stop. You're sitting there for the next blow to come instead of doing something that would put us in a position. In other words, and I think that this is like a war of attrition that we've witnessed in terms of what happens to a group of people when they've been sabotaged and they've been warred on for their entire existence in a certain place. I think you see a lack of people wanting to create independence because the lessons of the past, the epigenetic memory of the lessons of the past is shown. When Black people build something up, they come in and tear it down. They burn it down. They'll shoot it down. They'll drown it out. They'll bypass it. They'll do something. They'll create new tax laws. They'll filibuster. They'll gerrymander certain districts so you won't get economic sourcing based on your tax dollars. There's something. So there's always that part. Now, when we talk about these other groups, let's get into some of the things they do and they have access to. First of all, there are this thing called tax treaty laws. And a lot of us don't know what tax treaty laws are. So basically, the tax treaty laws are agreements between countries that when an immigrant comes in from my country to your country, that you're going to give them enough money, you're going to provide them with enough resources to get a start. to be financial, to be stable, right? So they come in, and sometimes it's even based on individual family members. I know that because they did that with a supermarket chain on the East Coast called Cousins, was primarily owned by members of the Dominican Republic that came here.
Shout out to the new member.
Right. So what they also have done is if they create clean slates. So your black politicians, especially cities that run by black politicians, will do things where they'll tell you as a black man, if you want that business, that building right there, you're gonna have to pay all the back on tax money on it, all the liens that are on that property. You're gonna have to have them lifting. You're gonna have to pay for that. Meanwhile, you have other groups that are encouraged to come here. So when they get here, those tax liens are bypassed. They erase them off they remove them. And then they also give them amnesty, so where they don't have to pay taxes for 10 years. So it's all profit. Not to mention the little side hustles they got going on that nobody want to talk about inside those businesses. You know, like what is the donuts really selling, or is it what's in the basement really selling? But we don't want to get into that conversation. So because what's really coming over in those crates. But one of the things that we can do as black people is, and this is why I always go back to think tanks.
Yep.
All those groups, they found a way to create a community bank. And that community bank is what they lean on for financial stability to start. We try to start businesses, first of all, like we were saying earlier, we're very secretive. We don't trust each other, so I'm not going to share my ideas with somebody. And with good reason, because sometimes the people you know and love are still your ideas. But that's beside the point. We need to get to the point where we can trust each other and be trustworthy to build those things.
Yeah.
But it comes with having a plan that would work. And a think tank is the best place to start, because it will acknowledge, it'll give you a proper analysis of why. You know, I mean, we talk about all the time, you know, the various different reports that spoke to the stagnation of black culture and socioeconomic class. The Moynihan report speaks to that. We have placed the importance of going to college and owning a white collar over the lack of prestige that comes from having a blue collar business. When you look at those other cultures, what else do they have in common? They believe in families.
Family and blue collar work.
Right. And it doesn't stop them from getting education. It doesn't stop them from getting degrees, but they believe in family first.
Yeah.
We want to get as far away from our family as possible. Yeah. And too many of us want to be single and independent. And we believe in co-parenting rather than the building of family trust and union. So yeah. I'm going to shut down there because I know we got a lot more to get into.
Yeah, but no, I'm with you. And you're going on a good point because, you know, I want us to act like a mini think tank for a little bit as we, you know, put our brains together. You know, we've done it before on the phone, so act like a little mini think tank. But to harp on some of the points you made, it's like I hear the conversation that they're having, and I understand it. And especially what we're having, and we understand in the long run why it's important for us to build and scale and be able to duplicate within our community, educate, pull people up. You know, going back to the one of the codes of conduct, the crack in the concrete rule, being able to reach back and pull others up with you, right? Because that's directly what this is under, the crack in the concrete rule in our code of conduct, right? So, but I have to think like that, behave like that. We have to operate like that as individuals and as a group. So I have to give a damn about myself and then give a damn about you first. And I think that's what we have to be realistic about, that outside of your enclaves, outside of your groups, outside of your silos, do you give a damn about anybody else to do the same thing, right? Because once again, she talked about within the bourgeoisie areas how they may do it a bit for those that they operate with. And we know how America runs when our people operate in silos and groups and stuff. If you're not a part of this, you don't get this. I've always railed against that because I thought that was dumb as hell for us as Black people to also operate in silos, operate in groups. We can't complain about what we don't have on a mass scale on one end and then literally and practically every day operate in silos on the other end and wonder why we don't have what others have. Well, how the hell we're gonna have what others have when the person who's doing the criticizing, your direct actions are against the movement. You work in silos and you don't give a damn about not working in silos. And you don't give a damn about going out and helping it. Look, I operate different. I don't have to know you to help you. All I need to know is you need help and you give a damn. I'm gonna help you because I'm a real one.
I think one of the things that's up front here is dealing with the trauma, and that's the hard part. Like and I think PC was hitting on that because there's a component of acceptance that we don't want to do as a culture. Individually we may do it, but culturally we don't want to do it. And when you're dealing with trauma, when you're working with trauma, when you're treating trauma, we talked about trauma before. Trauma is not a coat that you put on and you go to therapy and they teach you how to take it off. That's not how that works.
Right.
Trauma is it literally alters your brain. It changes the way you see the world. And therapy is there to help you adjust to the new way of seeing the world, to help you learn how to live with yourself, because even though these things happen to you. And I think Black people have to go through that step first. We've got to learn how to be Black. We've got to learn how to be comfortable with being Black, with who we are, what we've experienced as a culture group, and seeing that same thing in other members of our culture group when we look out at each other. So I think that is a part of it. We got to also this idea she presented that Black people do share, that I get that you feel that way because you've seen it, but ma'am, it's demonstrably false to suggest that Black people work together. That is demonstrably false.
Well,
and how we know it's false? Go ahead.
If that was true, the conversation wouldn't be had.
Exactly. The mere fact that you're having the conversation you're having is proof that the thing that you're saying is not true. But take it even deeper than that. Black businesses, only 2.7, less than 3% of the businesses that employ people are Black owned. Less than 200,000 of Black owned businesses actually employ people. Most Black businesses, those things that we love to talk about and brag about, are sole proprietorships. And most of them do not generate enough income to be considered anything more than a hustle, a side hustle at that, a little gig, something I do on the side when I need some gas money. If you get anything at all. For most people, it's an expensive hobby, is what it boils down to, because it's not generating any revenue. It's just so that they can sit in the room and say, I started a business.
I'm an entrepreneur.
It's a way for them to spend money while still feeling like they're being productive. So all of those things, right? All of those things bleed into this idea of my business is for me, it's not for us. And that's what we go back to when we start talking about this. So this idea that Black people do share is demonstrably false. Black people share amongst their small groups, but they don't share beyond that. And again, that comes with understanding the why and accepting. This is where we say, this is where the criticism is needed. We can't fix that if you won't accept the reality of that.
Right.
If I say Black people don't share and you say we share all the time, well, we can't address the reality of the fact that they do not share. That's what the numbers say. Now, if you have numbers to say something different, I love to see them.
Well, the problem in that and with her is you coming from your own personal experience, right? So if we all come from our own personal experience, we'll never be able to get to a collective truth because we're only looking through the lens that we can see. We're not really looking at the larger picture, because that's where the studies and the numbers and all these things, they'll come in, because it can show a better, larger picture of how Black people are living versus my own individual experience. Because, hey, I live a certain lifestyle, I earn a certain amount of money, I'm around a certain amount of people, and I see a certain amount of things through this small group of people. And it's only the same people.
Yeah,
Look.
well, go ahead, Pat.
Go ahead. Go ahead. I was just gonna harp on the business point some more. Go ahead, PC.
No, go ahead. I got it. Go ahead.
No, as I was gonna say, I just looked at I decided to pull up some stats to really drive this point home about Black businesses. And I'm on blackdemographics.org, Black Demographics, the premier site for Black stats.
Yeah.
And what's alarming to me is that a lot of these numbers haven't changed since I last looked at them. There's still only 1.2 million jobs created by Black businesses. If all the Black jobs were hiring people, they could only employ 5% of Black people. $127 billion in revenue generated. They could give about $4,000 a year to Black people, every Black individual. You're not talking of, that's not paradigm shifting. Those aren't paradigm shifting numbers. And Black businesses are the primary means through which you engage in economic warfare to acquire resources. We are not engaging in the economic warfare required to get resources, so we can't even talk about the economic system that is economics that would be used to manage the resources.
So let me ask this question, not to throw it all off, but just to make sure I have an understanding if there's a difference in the definitions. What's the difference between a Black-owned business and a Black-owned firm? That's what I want to know. Because I'm looking at the Pew Research, and it's saying about 7 in 10 Black-owned firms, 71% had between 1 and 9 employees in 2022. And I'm just...
So to my knowledge, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, somebody in the comment I know will, but to my knowledge, a firm in a business are interchangeable.
Mm-hmm.
They essentially mean the same thing.
Yeah. That's mine too. Joe, you gotta start giving us clues and hints sometimes. He be just asking this shit. We be going.
It just popped in my head.
No, a firm in a bit. Now I have seen it deviated out a little bit where people say, well, a firm is more of a partnership. So they'll say, okay, it's a specific type of business, but the terms are used interchangeably.
So yeah, this thing is saying while term and business are often used interchangeably, a firm typically refers to a more specific type of business of 10, often one that provides professional services like legal or accounting services, or business is a broader term encompassing an entity engaged in commercial activities with the aim of making profits.
White collar shit.
Yeah,
but
firm white
it's usually used. It's usually used interchangeably though. When we're talking in terms of this, because go ahead.
I think this what Pew Research is talking more of the white collar arena.
Right. And so, but even in that, and there's a statement there because most Black businesses are aiming to be in the white collar sector.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't differentiate them because Black businesses as a whole are not doing well. And so when you start breaking them out, firms, companies, organizations, all this other stuff, you can start to make the stats look different.
Right.
And the stats don't need to look different.
Well, that's why I asked, because this is specifically talking about white collar businesses if it's talking about firms. So it's not talking about Black businesses as a whole. So we're not able to see the larger picture of it.
Right. And that's the game they play. And they do it all the time. The same thing when they were talking about Black women are the most educated women in America. They play these games with how they're defining terms, and they hide the actual definitions in the small print because they know people are going to run with the title.
Right.
But oh, PC, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Y'all cooking. I'm looking for something. Go ahead.
But in terms of like the question you asked, I think once we get past this idea, once we're mature enough to criticize each other and we really start to make progress on that regard, we can then look and see and say, okay, what is the Black identity right now? So, in terms of something we can export, right?
Yeah.
Well, right now, Black people have two major things that they export: their bodies and their cultures. So if we're going to build off our strength is our athleticism, our physicality, our sensuality. Go ahead.
See now, okay. So when I was reading Black Label White Wealth, Dr. Anderson's suggestions within this was athletics and entertainment, using those two realms to be able to scale, because these are realms that we already are entrenched in, and we do have some type of I guess you could say influence in these realms.
Those are the realms that we dominate, typically in terms of being the producers, not in terms of being in control of.
No, right. But being able to flip that and into control.
But we have a model for how to control and export culture in a way that is beneficial for members of that culture.
Right.
K-pop. And the K-pop model is
the
Motown model.
Yes, the Motown model. So we already know how to do it because it's a black model.
Know it works. We did it. It worked for us. Another group of people did it. It worked for them. We know it works. The question becomes, how do you gain control of the means of production and distribution? Okay, but then it also becomes, how do you leverage that social capital? Because that's what you're getting from culture exportation. You are getting real financial capital, resources, but the big thing is the social capital, control of the minds and the hearts. How do you leverage that? So that's where there needs to be a Black business apparatus available to extract financial resources from the social capital that's built up.
Yeah.
But that becomes a very difficult thing because we position ourselves in terms of thinking about business like white people. And that model wouldn't work for what we're trying to do. White people they can afford to be individualistic in their thinking because they own every fucking thing.
Right.
When you own everything, you ain't got to worry about the group. Just by being alive, you benefit the group.
Just do your thing.
And that's where you have Jay-Z saying stuff like, my presence is enough. If you were white, your presence would be enough. But you're a Black man. Your presence is never enough.
That's why nothing's changed since, he.
So even in that, we got to break that mindset of this idea. The way we look at the world is through a white lens, and that's wonderful for white people. But
it's horrible for us. It's detrimental for us.
Well, and then so who's willing? So because it's going to keep coming to a few things. One thing is unavoidable. In order to process a plan, you have to be able to acknowledge or analyze what your circumstances are. We typically skip that part. We want to go straight to the solutions because we really want to get back to the cookout. We really want to get back to the party. We want to get back to the nightlife. We want to get back to the things that lead to a lot of fun and leisure, if we're going to be honest about it. So we don't really want to sacrifice. Who's willing to sacrifice for a generation of no leisure so that we can build a community up? When I walk to the job I go to, when I walk down the block, there's this Asian older Asian couple. They own a food stand. And while I don't eat the food off the stand because I always see it's just it's Chinese food. I don't really eat a lot of Chinese food. I have seen them do like nice things for like homeless brothers will come up to the truck and they have a plate waiting for them. So I appreciate their business. I appreciate the way they sort of like engage the community. But I've had conversations with them. Now, this couple has to be in their fifth. They got to be maybe in their 60s. Now, they're talking about they said they work that truck, the husband and wife, every day. And they're out there for about 10 hours every day. Lifting generators, moving trucks of ice, and all that type of stuff. You know, when I asked them about it, they said, well, we got 2 more years and then we can retire. But they did it so that their children, they talk about their children going off to college and their children being this, that, and the other. They themselves they sacrificed, their generation sacrificed their personal comforts. They sacrificed traveling, which is like the number one dating sort of thing here now, and fine dining. They sacrificed all that for the future for their legacies. They sacrificed all of that so that eventually when their children are doctors or executives, the bankers or scientists somewhere, then the custom is they go live with the children.
The children take care of them.
And the children take care of them. Right. They become part of the house. We used to have a culture that did stuff like that, but we bypassed a lot of it. And the fact of the matter is, we still don't believe in supporting Black businesses. Ever since desegregation took place, what do they say? Hey man, you're gonna buy ice from my store? I'm gonna go down the street to Mr. Charlie because white ice, his ice is a little bit colder. You know, we've been stuck on that. I mean, listen, man. They had the Department of Commerce, if I'm not mistaken, did a documentary in 1954 talking about how to sell the Negro.
Yep.
How to sell the Negro. Everything they projected in terms of what Black people wanted. We like the name brand qualities. We like to be flashy. We like to we like to seek the finer things and this, that, and the other. All the stuff they imposed on the Black consumer, we have taken it and have gone full blown with, like full rudder, no stop with it. People got their that when people were getting their pandemic checks, it's like some people were getting tens of thousands of dollars, hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Yeah.
They would buy a damn chain or they would buy a car while they're living somewhere where they still owe rent. We don't have the mindset collectively. And not to think of it, like we literally have people out here right now talking about baby mom and baby daddy culture and how to coexist with your baby mom and how to coexist with your baby father. Why not break that generational curse and let's stop ending baby mamas and baby fathers? Let's stop making them. So get back to Karen Hunter, like what Pat said. Let's start criticizing shit. Let's start making things shameful. It used to be shameful for a woman to go to church with 3 children and no father. Now it's embraced.
But nah, that's real. That's real because if you're gonna build something, you got to build it off a solid foundation. You can't build it off no bullshit. And it's disingenuous to start making plans without dealing with your problems and try to build on top of the problems because the house or whatever the structure is going to fall because it's built on shaky ground. So we ain't really being real about it and real calling out the real and putting the correct pieces in place like they're supposed to, it's going to be a perpetual cycle. And go ahead.
You're right. But one more important thing. We lack discretion. Everything we start building, we want to tell it on the mountain. Every time we start putting something together, all these other groups you hear about this, you see them become successful. You learn the stories of their success later on. We want to let's go back to Tulsa and recreate Black Wall Street. No, but shut the fuck up and just go do it.
But I think even in that, Pat talk about it all the time. Remind people about the real reason, the real thing behind Black Wall Street, as far as like you talked about when they got destroyed, rebuilt, and then integration. because Pat, you talk about that. Tell me.
I
know what you. I know what you.
I got close to listen. Like, all right, Joe, break it down.
Yeah, I was like, go ahead.
No, because I don't remember all of it like you were saying, but I know just the gist of it. That's what I was trying to throw it to you like that, because I don't remember the whole thing, just the gist. But I remember you talking about how Black Wall Street was destroyed, rebuilt, and then integration was one of the main things that took it out.
The white ice was colder.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, you pretty much you got it.
Well, right. Well, but that okay. So
you wanted details? I mean, because this ain't. I figured you didn't want to take up a bunch of time with details. So
well, you ain't got to go.
You got it.
Okay. I'm just making sure that's the gist of it.
That's the gist. It was destroyed. It was rebuilt. And go ahead, PC.
No, but when I bring up Black Wall Street, I'm also thinking about talking about the idea.
Oh yeah,
okay, specific. I'm talking about the idea. Because I don't even like the term Black Wall Street, because of what Wall Street absolutely was. So, I like to call them Black boomtowns, but there were more Black boomtowns and across the South. It wasn't just in Tulsa. Yeah, right. Wilmington, North Carolina. You had Durham, North Carolina. You had several. You had 53 other state places in Tulsa, Oklahoma, that actually were Black, popular business districts. So we had a lot of Black business districts and things of that nature. But the problem was we were forced to be amongst each other. And
yes.
When we talk about creating, our project, and y'all, the Independence Day project, which we all collaborated on and worked on, the purpose for that is because we never had a collective vision of what our future would look like if we were actually successful. And the first thing that came up with the things we're talking about now, the obstacles of white supremacy, in terms of stagnating us, the damage that white supremacy has done to us. But then if you remove that and you think about, well, what would it look like if we did it without their interference? That was the concept and the visualization that brought about the things we talked about building in the Independence Day project. Y'all know we didn't really talk a lot about white folk in the Independence Day project. We talked about things we could do collectively for ourselves. And perhaps that's one of the reasons why most people don't know about the Independence Day project, is because we were actually talking about doing it for self. Mm-hmm. We weren't talking about reaching out to nobody else. We were talking about collaborating, working with each other to redevelop our culture, because our culture does need to be redeveloped. We have a collection of things that we can culturally claim.
Right.
But if you go to, like the Cambodian community, they have core principles and core concepts that they all adhere to. Japanese, you always hear about the samurai culture. All right. The Chinese, they always hear about Confucius, or you hear about something that's consistent amongst most of the people there. With Black people, what do you hear? You hear, well, hip hop is our culture. No. Hip hop is a subset of a culture. Hip hop is the result of a culture. Yeah. It is not the culture.
Right.
Well, we got. Go ahead and write the timestamp down, Joe. We got fuck boys and pussy hoes.
That and generational curses. That is the culture. Perpetuation of generational cultures.
Yeah,
I'm not gonna say it again.
If the limit is here, we're here. So you can say fuck boys and pussy hoes again. I just want to say it.
You just closed the gap, Joe. You just shortened the gap.
Definitely. Nah, I'm not gonna say it, but I'm like, and I think
degenerates. We'll say that.
Yeah, like we have a degenerate based counterculture that is not working to our benefit, and it's because we keep allowing ourselves to be defined and represented by the lowest common denominator, and that's a regular and common talking point. Like it's one that we, to the point now where people are trying to spin the block and make it out like ratchet behavior ain't ratchet behavior. Mm-hmm. Nah, that's not ratchet. That's just Black people being Black.
Right. No, it's not. No, it's not.
Excuse you.
But that's a good point, because going back to, so if our export, if the business we scale is going to be culture, and this is the culture that we are exporting, we're going to have a problem, because the fact that it's being exported by us means that we're in a degenerate space. Even if that's the culture that is being exported by outsiders, that allows that another clear indicator that we're in the degenerate space, because that's the culture that's being exported, and we're not even in control of the crazy stuff that's being exported about us.
Did you see that clip where the Zulu tribe was watching the girls fight on some TV show in the UK, I believe it was? Some all-black TV show put together by a bunch of black entertainers, Daystorm, and what's the other dude that blew up on Vine? I forget his name. Anyways, they put together this black TV show in the UK, this reality-based TV show. And they brought in people from the Zulu tribe, dancers. And there's a clip of the black girls on the show fighting. And you see the Zulu warrior, the people from the Zulu tribe looking at them, and you see the disgust on their face as they looking at it. And it blew up all over like various spots, the social media, YouTube and TikTok primarily, with a bunch of black content creators and black people responding and saying, "I'm so embarrassed by this." Like,
no,
look
you're
at
not.
the way they're looking at us.
No, you're not embarrassed. You've been exporting nigga shit for the beginning. You're not embarrassed.
And that was my thing.
Right. Right. It's
Stop
only
lying.
embarrassed.
Y'all so damn, y'all be lying so goddamn much. Stop that. You know how we get down. These TV shows wouldn't exist if Negroes wouldn't still consuming them. They would have died 10, 15, 20 years ago.
But look what this crew, what is it? Shonda Rhimes, didn't Shaq wife? Weren't they the two primary
man, black people full of
reality TV shows that created this degenerate culture that led to the sort of the public image of this degenerative culture?
They put these chicks on just to fight now. Black people support, black women sit there and support that. Stop it.
Yes. In the comment section, that's all you see. But here's the thing, right? You don't need to elevate yourself standard-wise. See, we think elevation means materialism. Elevation means I'll be able to afford the finer things in life, the nicest cars, the jewelry, the gems, and all that other stuff. No, elevation is when, and I love that Dr. Amos Wilson clip that you played the other day, Joe, I talked about before. Elevation is when the average people in your community rise up. You lift the average people up. That's elevation. We want to shit on the average people. Look at when people put clothes. I'm about to shit on them with this. I'm about, like, I'm gonna stun on them tonight with this. Like, fam, that's your people. You should hope everybody looks nice tonight. We should go out, and it shouldn't be about, feeding to a fragile ego.
Yeah.
But we're not moving in a proper alignment with a culture of proliferation, because the counterculture is strong, but it's easy to attain. You don't have to raise it. I remember back when Boys in the Hood first came out, and it was like, yeah, we finally got a movie about the hood. And we've always had movies about the hood. I grew up when Beat Street and all that other stuff came out, right? So we've always had movies about the hood, but this is the first time we actually saw like gang culture on screen, right? Like in person. And so it was a fascination. What did we do? Well, I'm gonna tell you what I did. I was impressionable. I went out and got flannels. I'm on the East Coast. We never wore flannels. I was flannel jackets, and I went out. We're tossing up 40 out. You know what? One of the nastiest beers you could drink is St. Ives. We was buying St. Ives.
We were drinking Old English.
We need to bleed that up. They don't get no advertising. Did they pay you for sponsorship? Fuck that. Anyway, we was tossing up 40 ounces. Like, we were teenagers. But that was, so when we think, yeah, that's right, it's a celebration of our culture. No, it's a celebration of a culture that's been demoralized, because when people drink, it's typically to drown out their sorrows.
it's become normalized amongst us in many ways, and it's not in some ways, but in a lot of ways it's become normalized. And because Black people can see that, hey, there's a sector of Black people who actually exist like this, then we should have empathy for them. No, we shouldn't. We shouldn't have empathy for people who perpetuate bad behavior generation after generation after generation. No, we shouldn't.
But see, that's exactly what I'm getting at. Like, I'm saying these people exist. What can you tell me about vampires? They exist. In the words of the late great sage philosopher Blade, they exist. So this is what I'm saying. I think that those people should be allowed to exist. And we should be allowed as Black people to take advantage of them, to monetize them, to capitalize off of them. The problem comes in where we as Black people, because we're not a monolith. I agree with y'all. We're not a monolith. We got Black people, and then we got niggas. Chris Rock told us this years ago.
Yep.
I don't know why we don't listen to the sage advice of Chris Rock. He told us this. He also told us a lot of great things about, we're not gonna get into that. But anyways,
he did. He's a prophet.
So why shouldn't we? So what we need to do as the collection of Black people is we need to stop trying to reform the niggas. Let them nig out. What we need to do is we need to create a barrier, a wall of culture between them and our children, so that our children grow up understanding that this is both unacceptable and necessary in the current world that we live in. It's unacceptable for you to act like that, but it is necessary for us to export this to the rest of the world so that we can gain the resources needed to build our infrastructure. Now then becomes another layer of culture on top of that, where it's like, all right, but anybody that comes into contact with us need to understand immediately that is a character.
Mm-hmm.
If you bring that here, it is not going to go well for you.
Right.
What you see on TV is a character. If you see that person in real life, you can interact with them like that. You don't bring that to me. And so that speaks to like multiple levels of culture that have to be developed. So the question becomes, how do we develop those layers of culture while we need the resources that are going to be brought in from letting the ratchets ratchet out? Like we got to let the wrenches turn. We got to let them turn stuff. That's how you fix stuff. You put a wrench on a nut and you turn it. That's how you fix it. So we got to figure out a way to let them do them while also being, and it's a difficult spot to be in because, hey, this is not a natural spot to be in. There's nothing natural about our situation. So we got to come up with some unnatural solutions, but it's got to be centered in Black progress, not Black excellence, which is why, Michael B. Jordan delivered the greatest performance of all time for him in Sinners. Shout out to you, my guy. That had nothing to do with nothing. I just felt like
he just wanted to say it. Yeah, he did his thing. He did his thing. But nah, for real though, man. Like, I do think that the Motown model, us being able to export our culture, export
our music,
cultural expressions,
yes.
Whether it's through music, whether it's through just general showing of culture, whether it's athletic realm or some of those realms, cultural expressions, whatever, being able to use that to export. But before that happens, before we get to that, we got to get our minds right.
So I got one idea too, right? Just real quick, and at the end, this is for those of y'all who hung around long enough. And we talked about before, creating Black entertainment centers. We like to entertain anyway.
Yeah.
Well, why not have a place where we can have a movie house, where we can have community meetings? It used to be a church. Can't do that no more, church. But where we can have festivals, we can create, urban marketplaces for people with small businesses, and we can do things like that. To those are ideas that we can still do. And then not even needing to reinvent the wheel, but we just do it better. Because the Cambodians, they weren't before the other donut shop that you get coffee from all the time. So, but, you know, I just throw that in there, Joe. That's all.
You mean like what Tyler Perry said he was gonna do?
He built the studio, but you know.
Well, he built a studio, but he didn't build a movie house in every city.
Oh,
You know.
no,
Yeah.
he didn't do that.
So
He said he was gonna do that.
Nah,
I don't
I
know.
don't think so.
Okay.
Nah,
No.
I don't.
But, you know,
I don't even remember what Tyler Perry actual voice sounded like.
hey, I put it to you like this. All right, so we throwing around ideas, right? Y'all in the comments, same thing. Treat this as a mini think tank. What business, what industries, what businesses, what things could we scale? We're saying culture. We're saying cultural expressions could be scaled. What do you think? Go in the comments. Tell us what you think. Let's have nice conversation.
Hold on, Joe. Hold on. I know, and y'all keep doing that, but not just cultural expressions. We could also, and it's gonna be crude and crass. We could export our sensuality. We could export our sex. We could take over the porn industry. We could run it. I'm saying we could do that.
We already
doing it.
Throwing it out there, right? OnlyFans. We can take over OnlyFans, huh?
Hey, I ain't saying only. I'm talking about
do a Negro fan.
Look. I have yet to meet anybody that's more entertaining in that space than Wesley Pipes. I'm just saying. That is a funny guy. So funny guy. Because our bodies and our cultural expressions.
Hey.
They love watching Serena play tennis.
Hey.
I'm just saying.
I hear you. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, if y'all want to sell it, you can. I ain't telling you to do it. If you want to sell it, you can. Pat telling you to do it. Pat saying put the booty holes in the screen. Put the booty hole in the screen.
Look, the economy's turning. That's actually happening a lot more than we know.
Right. I was just like, Joe, didn't you just share something in the group about a girl making weird noises in the camera?
Oh yeah, that girl did put her hand in her pants because she was trying to show everybody she had that wet. And that girl in the back, like, ugh, wash your hands.
So I'm saying, if they already doing it on TikTok and Instagram anyway, and there are people out there, we just talked about capitalizing off them people.
Put your booty hole in the camera and scale it. There you go. Well,
that's how we that.
Yeah, that's how we doing it. That's how we doing it. Hey,
that's a lot.
VetLifeStation.com. Ain't no booty holes.
Hey, you can't vet life after that. Nah,
ain't no booty holes over there.
Nah, you need to space that out. Like, say something else.
I let it breathe a little bit.
You didn't let it breathe enough. Still smell like taint.
There's no goose juice and no booty hole over at Fet Life Station. All right. So
what is happening?
VetLifeStation.com. Make sure y'all check it out. Support the PC in this show, office hours with Professor Carl.
He gonna double down.
Yeah, man. Get it down. Hey, man, ain't no goose juice over there. It's all over here. Goose juice is only over here, not over there. All right? So, hey, man.
Wow.
ThePacks.org. Make sure y'all check it out. ThePacks.org. Go check out all the information, codes of conduct. Of course, on the shoulders1.com. Check me out. Thank you to everybody who's supporting the channel. Thank you to I got my member.
The ones that still here. Thank y'all.
Yeah, Byron Davis. Thank you for becoming a member. Thank you to everybody.
My guy said on the shoulders one last. So he put all of our stuff in front of his stuff.
I would say mine last. Okay. Hey,
man, this wild turkey out here.
You can only find.
Hey, that was good. That sounded
good. I know. You can only find goose juice at ontheshoulders1.com. How about that? Goose juice is only available at ontheshoulders1.com. Not nowhere else. Okay, but make sure y'all check us out.
On the block.
Continue to support what we got going on, and we'll be back next week. But remember, man, let's build on solid foundation, man. Hey, Gooch is up.